We are doing Extra Life again this year, where you can mash buttons, roll dice, play games, and help kids along the way. I hope you'll be a part of that with us. Stick around after the video for more information. christiangeekcentral.com.
All right, buckle up. This car has a spoiler. I just got out of Men in Black International. Not my kind of movie, as I'm sure will come out in the review. But let's get into the spoilery stuff. I don't really get the ending, you know? Okay, so Liam Neeson, his character was the mole, which, for starters, I just saw coming a mile away, not because of the script, but because of, just for meta reasons, you know? You see enough movies that involve an organization with a mole in it, and you start to see some patterns, and very often they will take like an elderly mentor type figure, and that will turn out to be the evil mole, you know? And I don't like that, you know? I mean, I would rather there be like some genuinely good mentor figures in movies. Hollywood already has an obsession with youth, and has for decades, I mean, since really its inception, and that only gets perpetuated, you know, as we have movies where the main hero, the main protagonist, the main one we're supposed to sympathize with is, you know, in their physical prime, as opposed to being in a place of maturity and wisdom in life. And we also promote the idea that, like, you know, we should rebel against authority or those older than us, or, you know, we don't have any wisdom to gain from them. And I'm not saying that this movie, like, perpetuates all of that, because the Liam Neeson character was ultimately a good character. He was a good person, the actual high T, but it's still just kind of following that mold, which is a little bit irritating. But even setting that aside, again, that device has been used so often in movies, you know. And the other thing too is, not only is it, you know, the older mentor figure, but it's a big star. You know, if High T was not played by Liam Neeson but played by a less known actor, then maybe it would get a little bit more, you know, be surprising. But it's just kind of a formula. It's just kind of, I mean, even listening to the commentary for Captain America Winter Soldier, the director said, yeah, I mean, who's the one that's going to betray you? It's going to be the biggest star that's not the hero, you know? And so if you've been watching movies for a while, if this was a book, maybe you would be a little more surprising. But if you've been watching movies for a while and seen this plot device, you know, in enough movies, you just start to kind of know where it's going to happen, you know. So that's a bit of a bummer. I do appreciate that the British lady, whose name I can't remember, who seems to be the head of Men in Black International, is potentially going to be set up to be a good, respectable mentor type in the future, you know. But they didn't. She didn't serve that role for the most part in this movie. So here's the thing that I don't get about the reveal that High T was the mole. I mean, was it really High T in the end? The Chris Hemsworth character was like trying to appeal to him when he mutated into his monster alien form or whatever the crap he was, and he was trying to appeal to him as if this, you know, the real High T was still in there somewhere. I think he even said something like that. He's still in there. I know you're still in there. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? This is a giant alien. Was High T and always? Is this High T's normal form? Like, you knew he was an alien and he's always been this alien? No, that's not the case. So why would you think that High T is still in there? I don't remember them ever explaining at some point that the Hive, you know, kind of like perpetuate themselves or reproduce or something by taking over, you know, indigenous organisms and mutating them into being like the Hive. I don't remember that ever being explained. Maybe it was, and I missed that detail in the story, but I do not remember that being said at all. Which says to me, why in the world are you trying to appeal to High T still being in there? I assumed that since they lost against the Hive when Hemsworth and High T went up against him in 2016 at the beginning, I assumed that what we're supposed to understand is that High T died during that encounter. Chris Hemsworth was neuralized, and the alien from the Hive took High T's place and has not been the real High T since that encounter in 2016. So I don't get that ending, that climax. That I don't get it at all. But they, they also used that. I mean, like, this is, I won't get into specifics about this in my review, but, as they were approaching the final encounter with High T / the Hive alien, Chris Hemsworth was having second thoughts, and he was like, yeah, but my gut tells me or something that, he's a good person. I thought I could trust him. I thought, and so we were meant as an audience to think, well, Chris Hemsworth should be able to trust his gut. What's bothering him about this situation? And then, of course, the reveal is that, in some sense, his gut was right, that High T did not betray them. He was taken over or replaced by this alien. So, it was kind of in service, the nature of the reveal, is that High T actually was not himself a villain. He was just replaced by or taken over by the Hive, which is totally unclear again. But yeah, that moment is certainly in service to the follow your gut motto that this movie is pushing. It was the final phrase of the whole movie. As they're taking off in the space car, Chris Hemsworth is like, okay, now this is a complicated piece of equipment. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna trust my gut. I'm gonna follow my gut on this one, So that's the placeholder for follow your heart in this movie, is follow your gut. And because there's also that romance, the romantic scene, which I might bring up in the review, where he's like, you've never been in love, you've never what did he say? Something like, you've never abandoned logic and followed passion, or you've never, essentially what he was expressing was, you've never followed passion at the expense of logic, setting aside logic and following passion, and that, at the beginning of the movie, she set herself up as basically someone who is not interested in romantic entanglements, and the boss, the British boss, asked her, what's more important than that? She said, finding out the truth of the universe, And I'm sure I'll bring this out in my review, but I thought that was interesting and cool, that, like, for once we had a character whose life purpose was not wrapped up in their romantic or sexual activities and goals in life, and I thought that was like a really cool thing, because we are in a place right now where people's identity is getting wrapped up in their sexuality. Which I think contributes to exploration of sexual things that God does not want for us, whether homosexual or heterosexual. And I think that, as Sam Alberry kind of points out in some of his stuff for Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, if you check out their YouTube channel, just do a search on Sam Alberry. Our churches typically don't do a great job of making single people feel like it's okay to be single and to not be pursuing, romance or marriage. There tends to be there's a tendency for us in the church to see single people, and I recognize this in myself, because I am wonderfully happily married, and I want that for everyone. And so, yeah, my tendency is to think, when I see, a 20-something guy that I am friends with, to think, man, I want him to have a wife. I want him to find someone, And so we can tend to think of being single as like this broken condition that needs to be fixed, when really that is not the biblical perspective. And so both in the church and in the secular world, I think, we tend to think that being single is, and not pursuing romance or a sexual life, we tend to think of that as like less than, less than ideal. But God has made some people for singleness. And we need to, I think, embrace that possibility in, both in our own lives, if that's what we're facing, and in the lives of others, that we know who are single. So anyway, I think that's about all I have to say about this movie. It definitely was not my cup of tea, and yeah. So I'm pulling into my neighborhood now. Those are all the spoiler things I have to say about that.
It is time for Extra Life again, and I'd love for you to be a part of it with me. Here's a recycled but slightly modified promo to tell you more. Once again this year, Christian Geek Central is participating in Extra Life. This is a charity that raises funds for the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals, which provides free medical care to children whose families could otherwise not afford it. And this is very often for critical, life-saving treatment. Joining our team only requires a willingness to ask your family and friends to consider donating toward your fundraising efforts. Participants also usually do something fun and game-related to draw attention to their fundraising efforts, like a special game night at your home or your church, or like me, you could do a crazy 24-hour video gaming marathon. Now, I'm theming it around video games, but really this event can be themed around any kind of gaming, which includes both video games and tabletop games of any kind. What you do to raise funds is entirely up to you, but I would love for you to consider joining the Christian Geek Central Extra Life team. As team leader, I'll be there to help answer your questions, provide some helpful tips if I can, and just in general be your fundraising cheerleader and try to draw attention myself to your fundraising efforts. You can get more information about the event as a whole at extra-life.org, and if you choose to sign up there, be sure to select Christian Geek Central as your team so I can get in touch with you and then just help in whatever way I can. Fundraising can begin at any time, but our main push is going to be through the month of October leading up to November 2nd. That's the annual Extra Life Game Day, when I'll be streaming my 24-hour video gaming marathon live and trying to stay awake without throwing up. More details on my live stream as we get closer to it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.